There is a very positive, deep-rooted plan to keep Islam always involved in itself in such an ugly manner that it can never raise its head again. So the battle you hear about is all fictitious. It has no room, no root. Look, now come to the latest Middle East situation, Gulf War. Were you not told by the most powerful media in the world, the American and the British and all that, that here is a new Hitler, rising with a threat to destroy the whole world? And so, large-scale preventive measures were taken, the whole world was involved, such heavy armament was moved to surround him, as one would feel justified when you hear the propaganda. Yes, if there is a Hitler, this has to be the measure. And what later on turned out to be, but what should have turned out to be even before? Why did not anyone in the West realize that the only one gun, super gun, which Iraq could possibly make, he was making with the help of some British firms, you know. And the only gas factory which Iraq had was made with German technology and German help. And all the weapons Iraq was using were borrowed from either USSR or from other Western countries. It could not make a single weapon of any meaningful usage, not even a good rifle. Yet there was a Hitler. You have forgotten Hitler. You have forgotten Germany. Or you have been made to forget it. I think it is the second. Intentionally all these things are done to malign Islam for nothing, and so that when atrocities follow, then nobody says that it is one-sided atrocities against the Western values and so on and so forth. But if you analyze this, this is exactly the situation. Now coming to the question of Kurds. As I said, it is deeply rooted in history. I can prove it. The Kurds, or Kurds they sometimes are called, are those people from among whom Saladin rose once. Prince Saladin, who obstructed the passage and frustrated the attempts of Christian crusaders for a long era of a procession of victories won in favor of Saladin and the Muslim world. So much so that King Richard de Lion, he and the Prince Philip, it was perhaps of France, they were so routed ultimately that for 200 years West forgot about crusades. He was a Kurd. Now recently I was reading a Jewish scholar, Bethel Halmi, and I was surprised to read this in that book. He said the place where Saladin had his final victory against the West is now in Israel, and we'll see to it that never another Saladin is born. Now, read this and now come to the historical facts. This is just maybe a mad cry of someone, but the Kurds were divided into 5 smaller groups, handed over to their neighbor countries by the British, by no one else. Part of the Kurds was handed over to Syria, part to Turkey, part to Iraq, part to Iran, and part later on to Russia. And this was done at the same time when Israel, the state of Israel, was in the offing. That is the same historic period. And when the Kurds attempted to liberate themselves from the Iraqis, for instance, who committed atrocities against them? The Iraqi regime at that time was too weak to do that. It was the British who, for the first time in the history, in 1920, used mustard gas against totally defenseless Kurds for having committed the crime of attempting to gain independence from Iraq. And they were enslaved by the British, handed over to Iraq. So the British said, who are you? We have a right. We are almighty. We can carve out states and we can destroy states. It's entirely our prerogative. Who are you to say in any name that you should be liberated? They were gassed in 1920. They were bombed so mercilessly in 1922 that village after village was razed to ground without anyone having a rifle to shoot back at. The result was, this is also recorded history, that one of the very senior pilots, British pilots, who was tipped for being future CNC, he was so sharply bitten by his conscience at what was happening, he resigned and returned to his country. He said, no more of my service in this Air Force, which is so brutal. And now when the same Iraqis try to suppress a so-called liberation movement by the Kurds, which was fully supported this time by the British and the West, then they raise hue and cry, how cruel, how dastardly these people are. They're guessing them. And they forget that when they were guessing Iran during the 8-year-long war, they were provided with all the know-how of how to make gas, and the West didn't move a muscle. They were committed to gas Iranian young soldiers, young and old alike. But I have seen pictures of thousands of young boys lying dead, gassed, completely, destroyed in their color of skin, and it is a miserable sight. Where was America? Where was Reagan administration at that time? Where were American values of high moral ground? So you can see that, whether you admit it or not, this is just one-sided injustice being committed with the help of a very powerful media. And the reason I have shown, they know that sometimes back in history, some people have fought for the rights of Islam. Or not Islam, I should say, Muslim powers. And such people who have potentials will never be given a chance again. So raise hue and cry like artificially you made a Hitler out of Saddam Hussein. So go to the public repeating the same thing all over again. There is this threat from the militant Islam. From which militant Islam? Who is dependent entirely for every bullet he borrows from you to fight you back? Have you ever seen such an army which will borrow arrows and weapons from the enemy, and the enemy is shuddering? They maybe we are destroyed by this army, who keeps on begging for arms, and we keep on giving them now. Again, what has been happening? Where is the jihad, holy war, against the West? Show me one instance where West was ever threatened. But we know holy war in Iraq against Iran, Iran against Iran. It was a war of attrition. 1 million Iranis were killed, 1 million or more Iraqis were killed, and the weapons were constantly supplied to them by the West, sold at sometimes at exorbitant prices. The result, the oil which God had given them was used to burn their own houses, and was also used to boost the Western rockets and Western industry and all that. So this is in a nutshell what truth is. And I only speak for truth. I'm not a racial person.